Cole came home at 2 in the morning, smelling like the wrong alpha. He could still feel it. Bryce's mouth on his, the 3 seconds he had kissed back before shoving him away. Black walnut and iron all over his shirt, his collar, his skin. 3 years of distance undone by one moment in a dark office, and now the scent was on him like a stain he could not wash out. Mack was asleep on the couch, waiting up from the look of it, laptop open on his chest, tea gone cold on the table. 6 days ago, Mack had sat on that same couch and told Cole he was in love with him. The apartment smelled like cedar bark and roasted barley, like safety, like home, and Cole was standing in the middle of it, reeking of someone else. His ex was his new boss. His roommate had just told him he loved him. He rode the elevator with one every morning and came home to the other every night, and right now he was standing in an apartment that smelled like one of them, covered in the scent of the other. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. I read every comment. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy today's story. 3 years earlier, Cole had not been looking for love. He had been looking for a seat in the 3rd row of a guest lecture on adaptive clinical trial design at the University of Minnesota, and he had been running 4 minutes late because the walk from his apartment in Dinkytown had taken longer than usual in the snow. He was 21. A senior in biostatistics, and sharing a cramped apartment in Dinkytown with 2 roommates and a transcript that compensated for a social life he had never quite figured out how to have. Omega. People knew. He just kept his scent controlled and his head down. The lecture hall was packed. Cole found the last seat in the 4th row and opened his laptop, already annoyed at himself for missing the introduction. The man at the podium was tall, dark-haired, and spoke about Bayesian dose-finding methods with the casual authority of someone who had actually used them on drugs that were now on the market. He wore a suit that fit like it had been cut specifically for his shoulders, which it probably had. His voice carried without a microphone. Bryce Young, 28, Director of Biostatistics at Aurelian Pharmaceuticals, one of the largest pharma companies in the Twin Cities, guest lecturing as part of the university's Industry Speaker Series. Alpha. Cole could tell from the back of the 4th row, not because Bryce's scent carried that far, but because of how he occupied space. Completely. Without effort or apology, the room organized itself around him. Cole took notes for 90 minutes and filled 11 pages. When the lecture ended, he walked to the front of the hall and waited behind 2 graduate students who asked questions about their dissertations. When they left, Cole stepped forward and said, "Your sample size recalculation in the Aurelian oncology trial assumes a fixed information fraction. But if you are using an alpha spending function with O'Brien-Fleming boundaries, i.e. the conditional power at the interim analysis would suggest a different reallocation." Bryce looked at him. Really looked. The way people look when they hear something unexpected from a direction they were not watching. "You read the Aurelian interim report," Bryce said. "I read every interim report your group publishes. Your Bayesian hierarchical model for the rare disease platform was the reason I switched from pure mathematics to biostatistics." Bryce's expression changed. Interest, obviously, but underneath it a heat that Cole, at 21, did not yet have the vocabulary to name. "I have office hours with the department tomorrow," Bryce said. "But I am free for coffee now, if you want to continue this conversation." Cole should have said no. He had a problem set due at midnight and a shift at the campus library at 6. But the man in front of him had written the paper that had changed the trajectory of Cole's academic career, and he was offering to talk about adaptive designs over coffee, and Cole was 21 and had never been looked at like that by anyone. "Yes," Cole said. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became a standing Tuesday night where Bryce would pick Cole up from the library and take him somewhere that served food Cole could not afford. Bryce lived 20 minutes away in a high-rise in the warehouse district. He worked 10 minutes from campus. The logistics were easy, which meant there was never a good excuse to slow down. Cole protested the first 3 times. By the 4th, he had stopped protesting and started looking forward to Tuesdays with an intensity that frightened him. Bryce was 7 years older. He had built a career that most people twice his age would envy. He spoke about drug development the way other people spoke about art, with genuine passion tempered by the hard-earned skepticism of someone who had watched promising compounds fail in Phase 3. He asked Cole questions about his coursework and then actually listened to the answers, leaning forward with his elbows on the table and his coffee growing cold because he forgot to drink it. He also touched Cole constantly, small touches that accumulated like interest, a hand on the small of Cole's back guiding him through a door, fingers brushing Cole's when he passed the salt, a thumb pressing the crease between Cole's eyebrows when Cole frowned at a dataset. Or each touch lasted a fraction of a second and left a residue of black walnut and iron on Cole's skin that lingered for hours. By the 6th week, Cole's body had started responding to Bryce's proximity in ways that terrified him. His scent would spike when Bryce texted. His sleep cycle realigned itself around the nights Bryce stayed late at the research center, as if his body was tracking an alpha it had already decided belonged to it. His heats, normally clockwork, started shifting their timing, pulling earlier, trying to sync with something Cole's conscious mind had not yet agreed to. The first kiss happened in Bryce's car outside Cole's apartment building in a snowstorm. Cole had been mid-sentence about a paper he was writing when Bryce leaned across the center console and kissed him, like he had been waiting for exactly this moment for weeks. His scent control broke in real time. The dried apricot note, the one that only appeared when his emotional defenses collapsed, flooded the car so fast that Bryce pulled back with dilated pupils and said very quietly, "I should not have done that." "Do it again," Cole said. The relationship lasted 14 months. 14 months of Bryce picking Cole up after late nights at the library, of dinners that turned into sleepovers that turned into Cole keeping a toothbrush at Bryce's apartment, of waking up in sheets that smelled like black walnut and iron and feeling a pull behind his ribs that was either love or biology, so close to love it made no practical difference. They never bonded. Cole was clear about that from the beginning. He was in graduate school, his career was not negotiable, and bonding, with its permanent changes and how it rewired Omega priorities toward nesting and pair maintenance, was a risk he was not willing to take until he had established himself professionally. Bryce accepted this. Seemed to accept it. Said he understood. But during Cole's heats, when Cole chose Bryce as his caretaker, when Bryce held him through the fever and the need and the raw vulnerability of it, their bodies came close enough to bonding that the wiring partially formed anyway, like a key pressed into wax but never turned. The impression was there. The mechanism had engaged, and when Bryce left, the impression did not fade. It calcified. It ached on cold mornings, flared in enclosed spaces, and responded to the scent of black walnut like salt in a cut. The end came on a Thursday. Cole remembered this because he had been running significance tests on a multi-center trial dataset, and the p-value that came back was .049. Right on the boundary of meaning something and meaning nothing. And he had been thinking about how much of statistics was just deciding where to draw the line. Bryce called it 7. His voice was different, charged. Cole mistook it for excitement. "I got the offer," Bryce said. "Executive Vice President of Clinical Development at Calder Biopharma, headquarters in London. It is the role I have been working toward my entire career." Cole's stomach dropped, but he kept his voice steady. "That is incredible. Congratulations. I want you to come with me." The sentence landed like a door slamming, not an invitation, a declaration. "Come with you," Cole repeated. "London is extraordinary for pharma. You could find a position easily. Or finish your degree remotely. We would figure out the logistics. I am in the middle of my master's program. I have a year left before I defend. I have a life here, Bryce." "Come on, Cole. You can find a job anywhere. There are biostatistics departments in London." Cole went very quiet. The the kind of quiet that Bryce should have recognized as dangerous, but did not. Ours because Bryce was 30 and had spent his entire adult life in a career that rewarded decisiveness over consultation, and it had not occurred to him that this was a conversation rather than an announcement. "You already said yes," Cole said. Silence. They needed an answer by Friday. "You accepted a position on another continent without talking to me first. I am talking to you now." "No. You are telling me. There is a difference." The argument that followed was the kind that strips insulation off wires. Cole said things he had been storing for 14 months, that Bryce treated their relationship like a variable he could optimize around rather than a partnership that required mutual input. That every major decision Bryce had made since they met, the travel schedule, the intensity of their physical relationship, the pace at which he had inserted himself into Cole's life, had been calibrated for Bryce's convenience, not Cole's comfort. That Cole had spent 14 months rearranging himself around Bryce's career, and Bryce had never once rearranged anything around Cole's. Bryce said very little. When he spoke, it was to say, "I thought you would want this for us. I am happy for you. I am wrecked about us. Both things are true, Bryce. Come to London, Cole. You are asking me to give up my career, my degree defense, my job offer, and my entire life to follow you to a city where I know nobody and have nothing. And you are asking me right now, tonight, as if this is something I should be grateful for. I am asking you because I love you. If you loved me, you would have asked before you accepted." Bryce left for London 11 days later. He sent one text before his flight. It said, "I understand." Cole stared at those two words until they stopped looking like language. "I understand." As if 14 months was something you could understand and file away. As if walking out was the same as letting go. Cole finished the semester on autopilot, defended his thesis the following spring, received his master's degree with distinction at 24, and moved back in with his parents in the suburbs because he had no money, no plan, and every corner of the city proper reminded him of a restaurant or a street or a parking lot where Bryce had kissed him. He spent a year at home, applied to jobs, helped his mother with groceries, sat at the kitchen table where he had done homework as a kid, and built statistical models for companies that would never hire someone without industry experience. His parents did not ask about the breakup. They could smell the grief on him, the sour edge his scent had taken on, and they gave him space the way parents do when they know their child is hurting, but also know that pushing will make it worse. The Vantage Biopharma offer came 11 months later. Junior biostatistician. Good salary, good team. He signed a lease in North Loop, a neighborhood he had never spent time in, far from the university district where everything reminded him of Bryce. He threw himself into work, showed up early, stayed late, built a routine that left no room for thinking about Bryce. He chose Vantage partly because Bryce was safely in London. Like different company, different building, different part of town. No risk of running into him at a conference or a coffee shop, or so Cole thought. The apartment in North Loop came through a posting on a company message board. 2-bedroom converted warehouse, exposed brick. Reasonable rent, split 2 ways. Cole's new roommate was a 25-year-old software developer at Google's Minneapolis office named Mack. Mack was not what Cole expected. He was alpha, which had given Cole pause when they first met, but his scent was so muted that most people assumed he was beta. His scent, dry cedar bark and roasted barley, registered as pleasant background warmth rather than alpha assertion. It was the kind of scent you stopped noticing after a few days, the same way you stop noticing a room that is exactly the right temperature. And except Cole never quite stopped noticing. He told himself he had. But a year into sharing an apartment with Mack, Cole's nervous system had organized itself around that scent, unconsciously, completely, without either of them deciding it should. Mack worked from home 3 days a week. He wrote code in the living room with his headphones around his neck, never on his ears because he said he liked hearing the sounds of the apartment. What he meant, Cole eventually realized, was that he liked hearing Cole. The sound of Cole's key in the lock, Cole's footsteps on the hardwood. Cole sighed one way when he was frustrated with a data set, another way when he was tired, and a third way when he was content. Mack had cataloged all three without ever mentioning it. They cooked together most nights, only two people whose rhythms had synchronized so thoroughly that the choreography of a shared kitchen felt natural. Mack chopped. Cole seasoned. They moved around each other in the narrow galley space without collision, adjusting around each other without thinking about it. Cole's friends noticed before either of them did. "You know he is in love with you, right?" said his colleague, a bonded Omega named Felix who worked in the same department. Cole had been eating a sandwich at his desk. He stopped chewing. "Mack is my roommate." "Mack is your roommate who grocery shops based on what you mentioned wanting to eat 3 days ago. Mack is your roommate who rearranged his work schedule so he finishes before you get home because, and I am quoting him here, he likes the apartment better when you are in it. Mack is your roommate whose scent is all over you right now, and not in a way that suggests you bumped into each other in the hallway." Cole looked down at his sleeves, lifted one to his nose. Cedar bark and roasted barley, faint but unmistakable, layered into the fabric of his shirt. Mack had not touched him. Cole had just been sitting on a couch that smelled like both of them, wearing clothes stored in a closet that smelled like both of them, living in an apartment where their scents had been mingling for so long that the separation was no longer clean. "That does not mean anything," Cole said. "We live together. Scent transfer happens." Felix gave him a look that suggested Cole's statistical training should have made him better at evaluating evidence. Cole went home that night and paid attention. Really paid attention. He watched Mack code on the couch with one foot tucked under his leg and a mug of tea going cold on the side table. He watched Mack look up when Cole walked through the door, and he saw the exact moment Mack's expression shifted. A fractional softening around his eyes that lasted half a second before he rearranged it into casual friendliness. "Hey," Mack said, "there is leftover stew. I made extra." He always made extra. Cole had never once asked him to. "Thanks," Cole said, and went to the kitchen, and stood in front of the open refrigerator until his face cooled down. The thing about Mack was that he never pushed, never angled for more than what they had. He existed in Cole's space with a patience that was either saint-like or strategic, and Cole could not decide which. Mack left the bathroom door open when he showered but never walked out without a towel. He fell asleep on the couch during movie nights, and his head would drift toward Cole's shoulder as if drawn by a gravity neither of them had agreed to acknowledge, and in the morning neither of them mentioned it. They were cooking up a romance. Cole knew this. He could feel it in the charged silences and the accidental touches that neither of them pulled away from quickly enough, and the fact that Cole had started falling asleep easier on the nights when Mack stayed up late, coding in the living room, because the sound of keystrokes through the wall had become synonymous with safety. And then Bryce showed up. The Monday after the elevator, Cole sat through a department-wide meeting in which Dr. Nadia Sato, the director of biostatistics, introduced Bryce as the new vice president of clinical development who would be overseeing the Phase 3 pipeline. Bryce shook hands, smiled, made a joke about Minneapolis winters that got polite laughter. He did not look at Cole once, which was worse than if he had, because the deliberateness of the avoidance meant he knew exactly where Cole was sitting. After the meeting, Dr. Sato pulled Cole into her office. "I am putting you on the Meridian trial reanalysis." Cole's stomach dropped. "That is Bryce's trial." "That is Vantage Biopharma's trial, and you are the best biostatistician in this department. Is there a conflict I should know about?" Cole considered telling her. Considered saying, "Yes, 3 years ago, that man was inside my life, and now he is inside my workplace. and what we used to be is making it physically difficult for me to be in the same building as him. But Dr. Sato had hired him based on his competence, and competence meant handling difficult situations without letting personal history compromise professional performance. No conflict, Cole said. Good. First meeting is Thursday. Cole spent the rest of the day in his office with the door closed, running models he did not need to run, because the alternative was sitting in the open plan area where Bryce's scent drifted through the ventilation system like a ghost that refused to leave. At home, Mack had made pasta. He set Cole's plate on the counter without asking how his day was, which meant he already knew, only because Mack had a knack for reading situations without needing them explained. They ate in comfortable silence. Then Mack said, "The X." "The X. How long is he here?" "Indefinitely. He is running the clinical pipeline." Mack absorbed this. His face stayed neutral, but his scent shifted, the roasted barley going denser, heavier. Cole noticed. He noticed because he had spent a year paying attention to that scent, whether he meant to or not. "Do you need anything?" Mack asked. "I do not know what I need." "Then I will be here until you figure it out." He said it casually, offhandedly, as if being there was a small thing, a minor commitment, like agreeing to water plants or pick up mail. But his eyes were steady on Cole's, and the steadiness in them ran deep. Thursday arrived. Cole walked into the glass-walled conference room with his laptop and a presentation deck he had reviewed 14 times, and found Bryce already seated at the head of the table. Their eyes met. Cole's scent spiked, the thyme sharpening, the apricot trying to surface. He clamped down on it, sat in the chair furthest from Bryce, and opened his laptop. "Walk me through the primary endpoint analysis," Bryce said. Professional. Clipped. Nothing in his voice that acknowledged the history between them. Cole walked him through it, explained the interim futility analysis, the conditional power calculations, the adaptive randomization protocol that was underperforming expectations. He spoke with precision and authority and absolutely zero emotion, and he did not look at Bryce's hands, which were resting on the table in a position Cole recognized. Because Bryce always rested his hands like that when he was trying not to reach for something. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. When it ended, Cole gathered his laptop and stood to leave, and Bryce said, "Stay." The room emptied. The door closed. They were alone for the first time in 3 years, separated by 8 feet of conference table and an amount of unprocessed history that could fill a warehouse. "You look well," Bryce said. "Please do not do that." "Do what?" "Talk to me like we are old colleagues catching up. You do not get to be casual about this." Bryce went still. The camphor in his scent flared. "What would you prefer?" "Honestly, I would prefer you transfer to literally any other office." "That is not going to happen." Bryce leaned back in his chair, not defensive, strategic. "I took this role because it is the best position in my field. I did not come here for you." "Great. But I am also not going to pretend you do not exist for the foreseeable future because it makes you uncomfortable. That is not how I operate." "How you operate is exactly the problem, Bryce." Cole left. His hands were shaking again. In the bathroom, he splashed water on his face and looked at himself in the mirror and said quietly, "You are fine." His reflection did not look convinced. The weeks that followed built a pattern Cole did not choose and could not stop. At work, forced proximity with Bryce. The Meridian trial had problems, serious ones, and Cole was the only person who could troubleshoot the adaptive design, because he had built the statistical framework as his first project advantage. For that meant late nights in the conference room with Bryce reviewing interim data, their scents filling the enclosed space until the air itself felt pressurized. Each session ended with Cole leaving first, walking to his car, and sitting in the parking garage until the trembling stopped. At home, Mack. The quiet constancy of shared meals and evening routines, and the way Mack looked up from his code when Cole walked through the door. That half-second shift in his expression, barely there, gone before it could be examined. But Cole had started watching for it. Cole existed between two gravitational fields and pretended he was in orbit around neither. The kitchen near-miss happened on a Wednesday. Cole was reaching past Mack for a mug on the upper shelf, and the stretch brought their forearms into contact, skin against skin. It a stripe of warmth that lasted 1 second and sent a jolt straight through Cole's nervous system. His scent spiked. The dried apricot, the note that only surfaced when his guard dropped, broke through and filled the kitchen with a sweetness so sudden that Mack went absolutely still. He was holding a spatula. His knuckles whitened around the handle. His own scent, usually so restrained, deepened. The cedar bark became richer, almost smoky, like wood placed close to flame but not yet burning. Cole did not pull his arm away, neither did Mack. For 2 full seconds they stood with their forearms pressed together, bare skin conducting heat, and Cole felt his whole body flush from the contact point outward. His breath hitched. Mack's did too. "Sorry," Cole managed, reaching for the mug. Tight space." Mack set the spatula down with deliberate care. "I need to take a walk," he said, and left the kitchen. Cole heard the apartment door open and close. Mack did not come home for 2 hours. When he did, neither of them mentioned it. They watched a documentary about climate migration and sat on opposite ends of the couch with a careful 18 inches between them. At one point, Cole's foot slid sideways and his sock brushed against Mack's ankle. They both left it there. Did not move away, did not acknowledge it. The silence afterward was deafening. If you are enjoying the story, drop a comment and let me know where you are listening from. I read every single one. All right, let us get back to the story. Bryce did not do subtle. He did strategic. Within 2 weeks, he had mapped Cole's coffee schedule, his lunch routine, or the exact window when Cole took a walk through the skyway to clear his head. He appeared at everyone, always with a reason, a question about the protocol, a journal article he thought Cole should read, a model specification that could have been emailed but that Bryce hand-delivered because Bryce did not win by email. He won by showing up. Each interaction lasted 2 minutes and left Cole rattled for an hour afterward, the leftover pull from their almost bond flaring like an old injury in wet weather. And the worst part was that Bryce knew it. Cole could see it in the way Bryce watched him, calculating, cataloging every flinch and every involuntary lean, filing the data away, building a case. "Your scent changes when he is around," Felix said one afternoon, watching Cole through the glass partition between their offices. "Oh, you know that, right?" "I am aware. It changes differently when you come in from home, too. But that one is quieter." Cole looked at him sharply. "Meaning what?" Felix shrugged. "Meaning your biology is telling a more interesting story than you are." He paused. "For what it is worth, the home one smells better on you, like you fit inside it instead of fighting against it." Cole spent the rest of the afternoon pretending that observation did not unsettle him. The late-night lab incident happened 6 weeks after Bryce's arrival. The Meridian trial data showed a safety signal that required immediate reanalysis, the kind of finding that could halt a multi-million-dollar program if confirmed or save lives if caught early. Cole stayed past midnight running the models, rechecking assumptions, pulling the data set apart and reassembling it from different angles. Bryce found him at 1 in the morning. The building was empty. The overhead lights were off. Cole was working by the glow of 3 monitors, his tie loosened, his sleeves pushed to his elbows, his scent completely unguarded because he was too focused to remember to maintain it. "I saw your badge still active on the security log," Bryce said from the doorway. "The safety signal is real. The subgroup analysis confirms it in patients over 65 with pre-existing cardiac conditions." We need to notify the DSMB by Friday. Bryce came closer, looked at the screen. His proximity set off the familiar chain reaction in Cole's nervous system. The pulse spike, the scent surge, the involuntary lean. But tonight, exhausted and unguarded, Cole did not fight it. He simply let it exist. "You found it," Bryce said quietly. "You actually found it. That is my job. It is more than your job. This is going to save lives." "I know." They stood side by side in the dark office, looking at numbers that meant something, and for a moment the 3 years between them compressed into nothing. This was what had drawn Cole to Bryce in the first place. Not the alpha pheromones or the expensive suits, the brain, the shared language. The fact that Bryce understood what these numbers meant and why they mattered and why Cole had stayed until 1 in the morning to make sure they were right. "I missed this," Bryce said, "working with someone who sees what I see." "Do not." "Cole." I said, "Do not." Bryce caught his wrist. The touch was light and Cole's whole body locked up. His scent collapsed. The time and the glass and the carefully managed composure falling away until the dried apricot was all that remained, naked and sweet and devastating. Bryce's breathing changed. His scent darkened, the iron becoming more pronounced, the camphor burning off until what was left was raw alpha. He pulled Cole toward him, somewhere between careful and desperate, like a man who had been holding himself back for 6 weeks and had finally run out of distance. He kissed Cole. Hard. His mouth was hot and certain and tasted like 3 years of silence breaking open at once. Cole's body responded before his brain caught up. His hand fisted in Bryce's shirt. His mouth opened. His back hit the desk behind him, and Bryce pressed forward, one hand in Cole's hair, the other gripping his hip. And for 3 seconds, Cole forgot every reason this was a terrible idea. 3 seconds of heat pooling low in his stomach, of Bryce's thigh pressing between his, of a sound leaving Cole's throat that he would spend the next week trying to unhear. Then Cole shoved him. Both hands flat on Bryce's chest, hard enough to break the contact. "You do not get to do that anymore," Cole said. His voice was shaking. His hands were shaking. Everything was shaking. Bryce stepped back, but he did not look sorry. He looked satisfied. "You kissed me back," he said, "for 3 seconds. 3 seconds is not nothing, Cole. It is biology. It is residue. It is not a decision. You keep telling yourself that." Bryce straightened his shirt. His voice was steady again, the brief vulnerability already locked back down. But your body just told me everything I needed to know." Cole gathered his laptop and left. He drove home in silence. He let himself into the apartment at 2 in the morning and found Mack asleep on the couch with his laptop open on his chest, as if he had been waiting up. Cole stood in the doorway and looked at him, at Mack's face, soft in sleep, unguarded, open, at the hoodie Mack was wearing that was actually Cole's, taken from the laundry without comment 3 weeks ago and never returned. At the mug on the coffee table, still half full of tea that Mack had made at whatever hour he had decided to wait. Cedar bark and roasted barley. The scent was everywhere. It was the apartment. It was the couch. It was the hoodie and the blanket and the air itself. And Cole stood in the middle of all of it and realized his hands had stopped shaking. For the first time in 6 weeks, his hands were completely still. He went to bed. He did not sleep. The next evening, Mack was sitting on the far end of the couch with his laptop when Cole got home. Cole dropped his bag by the door and sat down. There was a cushion of space between them. Normal distance. Roommate distance. "Bryce kissed me last night," Cole said. Mack's fingers paused on the keyboard. 1 beat. 2. Then he closed the laptop and set it on the coffee table very carefully. "And," Mack said, "and I pushed him away and told him he does not get to do that. But he did it. He did. and part of you kissed him back. Cole looked at him. How did you know that? Because your scent has been different since you came home last night. Not upset, confused. The way it gets when your body is doing one thing and your brain is doing another. Cole's chest hurt. I did not invite it. I know. It lasted 3 seconds. Cole. Mack's voice was gentle, careful. You do not owe me an accounting. I feel like I do. Why? The question hung between them. Cole knew the answer. He had known it for weeks, maybe months, the way you know the result of a calculation before you finish running it. But saying it meant changing the equation permanently, and Cole had seen what happened when equations changed without everyone agreeing to the new terms. Because you matter to me, Cole said. Naina and I do not want you thinking that what happened with Bryce changes that. Mack studied him. He had gone blank. Mack's face was usually easy to read, all warmth and dry humor, but right now he had shut it down completely. I need to tell you something, Mack said. The timing is terrible. It has been terrible since your ex showed up, but I do not think it is going to get better, and I am done waiting for perfect. Cole's heart rate accelerated. His body knew what was coming before his mind did. I am in love with you, Mack said. He said it the way he said everything. Plainly. Without performance. As if the sentence was a data point he was presenting for Cole's consideration, rather than a declaration designed to produce a specific reaction. I have been in love with you for about 6 months. It just happened. And I am telling you, because keeping it to myself started to feel like lying, and I would rather you know and make your own call than wonder. Cole stared at him. The apartment was quiet. The heater clicked on and the warm air started circulating, carrying their scents through the space as it did every evening, mixing cedar bark with cold glass until the apartment smelled like a greenhouse in early morning, warm and green and growing. I do not know what to say, Cole whispered. You do not have to say anything. I meant what I said. This is not a timer. There is no deadline. Mack. Yeah? I think I have been falling for you and calling it something else. Mack went still. His eyes widened, just slightly. He inhaled. The roasted barley in his scent went dark and sweet, like malt sugar in a hot pan. And Cole realized he had never smelled that note before, because Mack had been keeping it hidden, locked behind the same careful control that Cole used on his own biology. I am not asking you to decide anything tonight, Mack said. I just needed you to know. They sat on opposite ends of the couch. The space between them was the same 18 inches that had been there all evening, but it felt different now. Charged, mapped. Like every inch had been measured and assigned meaning. At midnight, Cole got up for water. Mack was already in the kitchen. They stood on opposite sides of the counter in the dark, close enough to feel each other's warmth. The window above the sink showed their reflections superimposed on the Minneapolis skyline. Two shapes in a dark room, nearly touching. I am scared, Cole said. Of what? Of choosing wrong. Of making the same mistake I made with Bryce, except this time it would be worse because I would lose my home too. You will not lose your home. You cannot promise that. I can promise that this apartment is yours as long as you want it, regardless of anything else. Cole's hand moved across the counter. His fingers found Mack's. They did not interlock. They just rested there, overlapping. The pads of Cole's fingers against Mack's knuckles. The contact was barely anything. A centimeter of skin. But Cole felt his pulse in it. Felt the warmth traveling up his wrist, his arm, settling in his chest. Mack's thumb shifted, drew one slow line across Cole's index finger. Back and forth, back and forth. The smallest motion. The loudest thing Cole had ever felt. They stayed like that until the sky started lightening. In the weeks that followed, Cole lived inside a split screen. At work, Bryce. The trial consumed them both. and the professional collaboration was genuinely brilliant, their minds clicking together as it always had, completing each other's sentences, arriving at the same statistical conclusions from different starting points. The brilliance was the problem. It reminded Cole of what he had loved about Bryce, the intellectual partnership, the shared fluency, how Bryce's brain made Cole's brain better. But Bryce also started doing something that Cole recognized with a cold clarity his 22-year-old self had not possessed. He started narrating a future, casually, in passing. When the trial publishes, I was thinking we could co-author the methods paper. There is a conference in Barcelona in June. The abstract submission is open. Meridian might spin off the platform technology into a new entity. I would need someone to run the biostatistics division. Each sentence was a move on a board. Bryce played people the way he played data, with patience and precision, and the absolute confidence that if he positioned the pieces correctly, the outcome was inevitable. He had always been like this. When Bryce was 28, Cole had found it attractive. Now, at 33, watching it deployed on him, it made his skin crawl. The worst part was that it was working. The professional collaboration was brilliant, and Bryce knew it, and he used it. And at home, Mack, who did not narrate futures, who did not lay breadcrumbs, who simply existed in the present tense of their shared life with a consistency that was so absolute it had become invisible until you tried to breathe without it. One night, Cole came home late from a data review meeting. His neck was stiff and his brain felt compressed, and the residue of Bryce's scent was still on his jacket from 2 hours of arguing about hazard ratios in a room with poor ventilation. He dropped his bag and sat on the couch and pressed his palms against his eyes. Mack appeared with a plate, grilled cheese cut diagonally with a bowl of soup on the side. Cole had not asked. Mack had just heard his footsteps and made a call about what kind of evening this was. "You ate?" Cole asked. "Waiting for you." "You did not have to wait." "I know." They ate. Mack told him about a bug in his code that had taken 6 hours to find and turned out to be a single, misplaced bracket. Cole told him about the hazard ratio argument, deliberately leaving out Bryce's name, and Mack did not call attention to the omission. Afterward, they watched 30 minutes of a cooking competition neither of them was following. Mack's foot was against Cole's under the blanket. When had they started sharing a blanket? Cole could not remember. It had happened how everything with Mack happened, gradually without announcement until it was simply part of the architecture of their evenings. Mack. Am I making your life harder? Mack looked at him, actually turned his head and studied Cole's face with the focused attention of someone running a diagnostic. Why would you be making my life harder? Because you told me something enormous and I have not given you an answer, and every day you watch me come home smelling like someone else. Mack did not answer right away. The cooking show played on. A contestant dropped a souffle and the judges winced. "I meant what I said about no deadline," Mack said finally. "But yeah, watching you come home smelling like him is rough. I am not going to pretend it is not." "Then why are you still here?" "Because I tried picturing not living here last week and got genuinely nauseous. Had to sit down." Cole swallowed hard. "My body has opinions about you that my brain did not sign off on." Cole understood that exactly. His body had been having unauthorized opinions for months. The next day at work, Felix pulled Cole into the break room during lunch. You look like you are running simultaneous stress tests on your own nervous system," Felix said. "I am fine." 4 coffees before noon. You are clenching your jaw again, and your scent keeps going back and forth between stressed and something sweeter, and I can smell it from my desk. You are tracking my scent oscillations. I am a bonded omega sitting 8 feet from an unbonded omega in crisis. I can literally smell everything you are going through whether I want to or not. Cole set his coffee down. What do you want me to say? Felix sat across from him. His voice dropped its usual lightness. I bonded with Sasha when I was 23, right out of grad school. He got a position in Denver. I had a research fellowship lined up at NIH. I turned it down, moved to Denver. I got a job at a small CRO that was fine, but not what I had planned. I know. What I never told you is that I have a spreadsheet on my personal drive that calculates what my career trajectory would have looked like if I had taken the NIH position. I updated it quarterly for the first 3 years, then annually. I stopped updating it last year, but I still have it. I will always have it. Cole looked away. Felix. I love Sasha. I do not regret our bond, but I regret the version of myself that I did not get to become, and those two things coexist inside me every single day. They do not cancel each other out. Why are you telling me this? Look, I picked the exciting one, and I love him. But I think about the other path more than I should. He paused. Just make sure you are picking a person and not a feeling. Feelings fade. The person is who you wake up next to when they do. Cole drove home that evening with Felix's words sitting in his passenger seat like an uninvited but necessary guest. Mack, who had started looking at apartment listings. Cole found them on a Tuesday. Mack had left his laptop open on the kitchen counter, and the browser tab was visible. 2-bedroom apartments in northeast Minneapolis. 1-bedrooms in Uptown. Studios in Loring Park. Cole's vision tunneled. His hands went cold. He stood in the kitchen staring at those listings and felt the ground move under him. Not metaphorically. His balance actually shifted. His hands gripped the counter and his vision went narrow and specific. Mack came out of his room and stopped when he saw Cole's face. You are looking at apartments, Cole said. Mack's expression closed. I started looking last week. Why? Because you need space to figure out what you want, and I cannot give you space while sleeping 15 feet from you. My scent is all over this apartment. Your biology is responding to it whether you want it to or not, and I do not want to be the reason you stay. I do not want to be the default, the familiar option, the path of least resistance. You think that is what this is? Path of least resistance? I think you are standing between a man who lit your brain on fire and a man who makes your apartment feel safe, and those are not equivalent offers, and I do not want you choosing safe, because it is easier than choosing fire. That is the stupidest thing you have ever said to me. Mack flinched. Cole. No. Cole's voice was rising now, which was unusual, because Cole's voice almost never rose. He was a man of controlled tones and precise language, and the fact that control was failing said more than the words themselves. You do not get to make this decision for me. Bryce did that. Bryce made a decision about our future without consulting me and called it love, and I will not let you do the same thing from the other direction. I am not Bryce. Then stop acting like him. Stop deciding what is best for me without asking what I want. What do you want? I want you to stop packing. The sentence ricocheted off the brick walls. The apartment was very quiet afterward. Mack stood by the hallway, his laptop dangling from one hand. Cole stood in the kitchen, breathing hard, his scent wide open, apricot and thyme and cold glass, and underneath all of it, in a note that smelled like roots and soil and decision. I need to think, Cole said more quietly, but I need to think with you here, in this apartment, where you belong. Mack set his laptop on the counter. Okay. Okay? I am here. That has always been true. Cole pressed his palms against the counter. I know. The following Monday, Cole walked into Bryce's office and closed the door. Bryce looked up from his laptop. His scent responded immediately, the iron and walnut sharpening with attention, the camphor receding in a way that meant his defenses were lowering. After 6 weeks of proximity, he still reacted to Cole like a match near gasoline. Cole could feel the pull, the leftover wiring from their almost bond, insisting this alpha still mattered. The key in the wax impression pressing deeper. I need to tell you something, Cole said. Bryce closed his laptop. Sit down. No, this will be quick. Cole did not sit, did not soften his voice, did not give Bryce any of the preamble that Bryce's face was already preparing to receive graciously. I am done. Whatever you think is still happening between us, it is not. Cole, I am not asking for your input on this. Bryce leaned back, crossed his arms. The move looked casual, but Cole recognized it as the posture Bryce took in negotiations when he was about to change tactics. You kissed me back 3 weeks ago. My body reacted to yours. That is chemistry, not a choice. And I am tired of you treating it like evidence. Because it is evidence. It is leftover wiring from a relationship you walked out of. That is all it is. You do not believe that. I do not care if I believe it, Bryce. It does not matter. You left. You made a decision about both of our lives without consulting me. You got on a plane and you sent me 2 words. And now you are back and you are doing the same thing. Running calculations, positioning pieces, assuming the outcome is inevitable because it always was before. Cole's voice stayed flat, controlled. The anger had burned through its hot phase weeks ago, and what was left was flat and certain. I am not a variable you can optimize. I am not trying to optimize you. You have been doing it since the day you showed up. The coffee runs, the journal articles, the conference in Barcelona. You are playing a long game and I can see every move. I need you to hear me when I tell you it is not going to work. And your roommate? That is none of your business. It is, if I am losing you to him. You are not losing me to him, Bryce. You lost me 3 years ago when you got on a plane. He has nothing to do with it. Bryce stood up, paced to the window. Cole could see him running calculations, as he always did, trying to find the angle, the variable he could adjust to change the outcome. Bryce did not lose. It was not in his wiring. I came back, Bryce said. I came back and I am standing here telling you I made a mistake. What else do you want from me? Nothing. Cole said it quietly, and that was what made it land. I do not want anything from you anymore. That is what I am trying to tell you. Bryce turned. His scent was sharp with iron. Cornered. You are making a mistake. Maybe. But it is mine to make. You do not get a vote in this one. A long silence. Bryce exhaled. Cole had never heard him make that sound before, like a man accepting a result he could not argue with. He better be good to you, Bryce said. His voice was tight. Goodbye, Bryce. This is not how I wanted this to go. I know, but it is how it went. Bryce stood there for another second. Cole could see him fighting the instinct to make one more argument, run one more play. Then he stopped trying. He walked out. Cole sat in the quiet office and waited to feel something. Relief came first, then a sadness that was smaller than he expected, the size of a bruise rather than a wound. He picked up his phone and texted Mack. What are we doing for dinner? Cole stood, turned toward the door, then stopped. For what it is worth, he said without turning around, London was the right decision for your career, and leaving me was the wrong decision for your life. Those can both be true at the same time. He left the office. He took the elevator to the lobby. He walked through the atrium and out into the Minneapolis cold and stood on the same spot where he had stood 6 weeks ago, shaking and disoriented and unable to breathe. This time he was not shaking. This time the cold felt like clarity. He drove home. It was 4:30 in the afternoon, early for him, and Mack was on the couch with his laptop open and his headphones around his neck, and he looked up when Cole walked through the door, and his whole face changed for half a second before he caught it. Cole walked to the couch. Mack watched him, his expression cycling through surprise, then caution, then a look Cole had never seen on him before. Hope. Barely contained. There was a box on the floor near the hallway, one of Mack's packing boxes, half filled, a folded shirt visible at the top. Cole reached into the box and took the shirt out. He walked to Mack's room. He opened the dresser drawer. He put the shirt back. Then he came back to the living room and took another item from the box, Mack's copy of a book they had argued about in their first week as roommates, a light-hearted argument that had lasted 3 hours and ended with both of them laughing until Mack snorted tea through his nose. Cole placed it back on the bookshelf. He returned a coffee mug, a phone charger, a pair of running shoes. Mack watched every item leave the box and return to its place. His jaw was tight. His hands were flat on his knees. His scent had broken open completely, the cedar bark and roasted barley flooding the room, raw and overwhelmed, filling the room. "Cole," Mack said, Don't what? Don't do this if you are not sure. I meant what I said. I would rather lose you honestly than keep you out of guilt." Cole sat on the couch, right next to Mack, close enough that their knees touched. He took Mack's face in both hands. "I talked to Bryce today," Cole said. "Told him it is done." Mack searched his face. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I am." And he meant it. "Mack, I need you to hear something. You are not the safe choice. You are not the consolation prize. You are not what I am settling for because the other thing did not work out. Okay? You are the first person who ever made me feel like I could just exist without performing. Odds like I could come home and be tired and boring and you would still be there, and I did not know I needed that until you gave it to me." He kissed Mack. This kiss was calm. His choice, made with his whole brain, every part of him agreeing for once. He kissed him. Slow. Deliberate. His thumbs traced Mack's jaw, and he felt Mack's breath stutter against his mouth. Then Mack's hands were on his waist, pulling him closer, and the kiss deepened into something that made Cole's knees go soft. Mack kissed like he did everything else, thoroughly, without rush, like he had been studying for this specific exam for months and was finally allowed to show his work. His teeth caught Cole's lower lip, and Cole made a sound that surprised both of them. Mack pulled back. He was breathing hard. His face was flushed. His scent had cracked wide open for the first time, the muted quality gone, and what was underneath hit Cole like walking into a wall. Rich and warm and layered, cedar and barley and a warmth underneath that Cole had no name for. Alpha. Completely, unmistakably alpha. Cole had been living with this scent for a year and had never once smelled the full thing. "You have been holding back," Cole whispered. "You have no idea," Mack said, and his voice was wrecked. They pulled apart. Mack's forehead rested against Cole's. "Fair warning," Mack said, barely above a whisper. "I have been in love with you for months and I have zero idea what I am doing now. You have been doing it this whole time. Just keep going." "Cooking too much and stealing your hoodies?" "Exactly that." He smiled. It was the first real smile Cole had seen from him since Bryce arrived, and Cole's stomach flipped. This was what he wanted. This exact thing. The guy on the couch in the stolen hoodie who smiled like the sun just came out. 3 months later, the Meridian trial published its results. The safety signal Cole had identified led to a protocol amendment that carved out the at-risk subgroup and ultimately saved the program. Bryce presented the results at a conference in Geneva. Cole's name was on the methods paper as co-author. It was a clean collaboration, professional and productive. And if something in Bryce's tone shifted when they worked late, if his scent occasionally flared when Cole leaned across the table to point at a data visualization, neither of them mentioned it. Bryce transferred to the San Francisco office in February. Cole found out through company email, which told him everything about where they stood now. On his last day, Bryce stopped by Cole's office. He leaned against the doorframe with his arms crossed, and for a second he looked exactly like the man who had stood at the front of that lecture hall 5 years ago. Confident, certain, used to getting what he wanted. "San Francisco," he said. "I heard. The pipeline there is better anyway. Larger patient population. More Phase 1 opportunities." He was doing it again, framing his exit as a strategic decision rather than a retreat. Cole recognized the move because Bryce had used it when he left for London. "I am not leaving you. I am pursuing an opportunity." "Good luck with it," Cole said. Bryce looked at him for a long moment. The mask slipped, just for a second. In underneath, he looked frustrated and genuinely hurt. Then it was gone. "For what it is worth," Bryce said, "I did not come back just for the job. I know you do not believe that. But it is true. I believe you. Then why was it not enough?" Cole could have given him the real answer, could have explained about the apartment that smelled like cedar bark and the roommate who cooked extra, and the quiet that had rebuilt something Bryce had broken. But Bryce would hear it as competition, as a problem to solve, as a variable to optimize, and Cole was tired of being optimized. "Because coming back is not the same as staying," Cole said, "and I needed someone who stays." Bryce's jaw worked. He nodded once, sharp, how he acknowledged data he did not like but could not dispute. Then he straightened up and walked out without looking back. Cole watched the empty doorway for a while. Then he picked up his phone and texted Mack. "What are we doing for dinner?" At home, the apartment had changed. Not physically. The same exposed brick, the same galley kitchen, the same couch with the same 18 inches that was now 0 inches because Mack had migrated to the middle months ago and Cole had migrated to meet him. But the scent had changed. Cole's cold glass and crushed thyme had woven so thoroughly into Mack's cedar bark and roasted barley that the apartment no longer smelled like two people sharing a space. It smelled like one thing. Greenhouse in early morning, warm and green and growing. Felix had been right. Cole noticed it for the first time on a Saturday in March. He had been out running errands, and when he opened the apartment door, the scent hit him like walking into a warm room from the cold. Cedar and thyme and barley and glass. All of it. Together. He stood in the doorway breathing it in and realized he could not separate the notes anymore. Could not tell which ones were his and which were Mack's. His body had been quietly rewriting its own chemistry for months, absorbing Mack's scent into its own baseline without asking permission. Mack was in the kitchen. He had made coffee. 2 mugs on the counter, one black, one with too much sugar. Cole had never told him how he took his coffee. Mack had just figured it out. "Morning," Mack said without looking up. "Morning." Cole took the mug. Their fingers brushed. Neither of them flinched. Neither of them pulled away. It was the smallest thing in the world, and it was everything. He leaned against the counter next to Mack, close enough that their shoulders touched. Closed his eyes. Let his scent do whatever it wanted. For the first time in years, it did not smell like fear. The end. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the story, tell me your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear from you.